Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. My name is Ramesh Bijlani and I'm speaking from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. And it's my privilege to send to you all the love and blessings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother from here. I have with me this morning Aditi Kaul, who is a well-qualified psychologist. She has a PhD in psychology, but she's a perpetual student. She hasn't stopped learning, she says. She's still exploring. But all the same, she has started teaching psychology at the Oro University at Surat. We'll have a conversation. It's not that I can answer all the questions that she has, although it may take a shape of a question-answer session. I'm sure many of the questions she'll be able to answer better than I can. So Aditi, please go ahead.
Yes. I think the first question which I want to ask you is that how do I know that I know, and how much I know, and how much more I need to know? How do I solve that?
Very quickly, you raised many important questions, interrelated, but at the same time very important. I think your first question was, how do I know that I know? The simplest answer would be that I know that I truly know something only if I can apply it. Because there's a big gap between just knowing and understanding something and being able to put it into practice. This is true everywhere, particularly on the spiritual path, where it's so easy to know and understand something, but so difficult to actually put it into practice because of our own weaknesses, because of various limitations that we have. And that's why it's a long period of that realizing that knowledge, internalizing that knowledge, testing that knowledge through our own experience. All these things put together lead to a certain deepening of what we know so that it becomes relatively easier to put it into practice. What was the second question?
How much I know and how much more I need to know?
Well, the more we know, the more we realize that we know very little. And also that what we know is very little as compared to what still remains to be known. However, that should not discourage us from trying to put into practice what we already know. And also passing on to those who may know still less. So being a teacher is not a problem, because if a teacher waits to be a teacher only when she knows everything, she'll never be able to teach. So, I mean, that is how we are able to pass on to the next generation on one hand, which is obvious. But then while we teach, we also learn still more. So we learn a lot through teaching. We learn a lot from our own students. And that's how this process really continues.
Yeah, that is true. Like when you're saying that it is a continuous process, even in my own experience, I've seen it. But sometimes I often see in the education system that there's somewhere an overlap between knowledge and information. Like at one time we are looking at, like how you were saying, it's a never-ending process. But then when you come to an academic setup, there's a time frame, there's a semester system that's okay, this much is time for this question, like this module, or this semester is for this module. So how do you see the role of time in this, and how do you see that difference between knowledge and information, and is there a difference according to you?
Sure. Information is at the lowest level. Knowledge is at a higher level, and it's still at a still higher level is wisdom. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it becomes a part of our own experience and we are internalized it. So these are different grades, but at the same time, while these are ideas which we should keep at the back of our mind, the ideas have to be given a form, and in the system they are given a form. A certain degree of dilution of the idea while giving it a practical shape is inevitable. What we have to try and see is that this dilution is the minimum. To some extent, it is dependent on the system in which you're working, but there is quite a bit of freedom that the teacher herself has if she keeps in mind that basically I have a system within which I have to work, but the system is supposed to serve the cause of the idea or the spirit behind it, not the other way around.
Sure. Yeah, so you do see a role of exams, and just the way it is conducted is what you're saying makes a much more difference than just the sake of information overload.
Yes, exams is an important point again, because enlightened educationists generally like to feel that the student should learn what the student is really interested in learning, and if the student is well motivated, then there's no need to examine the student. But then in the real world, we find that we have a large number of students. Not all of them are equally well motivated, and the exam does have a purpose. They put in extra work and manage to learn a lot more under the pressure of the exams. And in certain areas like medicine or psychology, for that matter, if they were to become counselors, these are areas where it's important that before they are sent to the society to go and treat patients or counsel clients, we ensure that they achieve a certain level of competence. And therefore, exams do have a place in the real world. However, having said that, I have myself been a teacher for several decades. So, what I would like to say is that while the students sometimes may ask for examination-oriented teaching, I used to say, no, in my case, it will be the other way around. It will be teaching-oriented examinations, which means that we can examine the students in such a way that they learn also through the exams. And how that happens is, if we encourage, firstly, the right sort of approach to exams. In examinations, we have two important things. One is reliability, the other is validity. Reliability is the reproducibility of the exam. That is, the student, for the same type of performance, should always get exactly the same score. Validity is, to what extent are we really examining what we should be examining? What we are asking the student, is it really worth knowing? While for selection of students for a course, reliability may be more important. When we are conducting exams at other levels, once the student is in the course for certification, the validity, I think, should be given much greater importance, which means that we should ask questions which are asking for something that is really worth knowing. And what is it that is really worth knowing? Not factual recall. That's the first thing. Because factual recall was always not very important, but now it is even less important than earlier because everything is available on Google. So at the click of a mouse, you can get whatever you want. So what is important is to encourage higher faculties of learning, thinking logically, critically, and being able to apply knowledge, being able to solve problems. Now, these are the types of things that the questions should ask, which means that the student need not really read much just before the exam. The student should be generally interested in the subject, should be reading what is expected and quite a bit around it, and then come with a fresh, sharpened mind to take the exam. What he has read strictly in terms of the syllabus should not matter so much. What should matter is his ability to think on the spot in terms of the haze that has built up in his mind on the basis of what he has been reading for the last year or two. So that is the type of exams that we should be designing. And that can be done both in case of short answer questions, essay type questions, as well as multiple choice questions. While it is easier to frame questions which test factual recall, and therefore the teacher should be willing to put in that extra hard work which is required for framing better questions, it's also important that we change the system in such a way that such questions are valued, and we teach in such a way that the students can answer such questions. So, all these things go together. And in fact, the assessment looks like a little bit of a tail in the entire system of education, but it is very important. An educationist has put it very well. She said that assessment is the tail that wags the dog of education. So, here it's not the dog that wags the tail, it is the tail that wags the whole dog, the entire dog. Which means that it is what you reward the student with in exams, which determines what they will learn, how they will learn, what learning styles they will have. So, therefore, the assessment system is very important. While it is a necessary evil, what type of exams we conduct is also extremely important.
Yeah. I think what you're saying also brings back one of the very important points which I've also seen in my classes, that like how to create reflective spaces for students, not just in the class but also in general. Just how can they create that space and then giving a message that exam, like usually exams are for 3 hours. So those 3 hours are not such an evaluation for who they are, but a kind of a reflective space for them that, okay, these are the 3 hours given to me. This is a subject I've been with for say 1 semester, 1 year. Now it's a relationship I share with this subject. I need to express it in these 3 hours. So not like also working on the way they take it during the course so that the exam doesn't appear like a evil, but also kind of aligns with their journey of exploration. So that is one angle which I think which came out from what you're saying. And but in general, what is your take on creating that reflective space throughout the year?
Exactly. We should be doing that throughout the year by encouraging the students to ask questions and then try to answer those questions themselves, which means one student could ask, maybe another student could answer. Also, if they are not asking too many questions, which happens a lot, especially in colleges, because it's interesting. If you go to the primary school, the students have lots of questions. By the time they reach college, they have very few questions to ask, which actually should make us think about what the education in schools should be like, so that we keep the curiosity of the child alive and at the same time sharpen his ability to ask better questions and to formulate the question properly. So that is what we should be doing instead of killing the curiosity of the child. But anyway, that apart, if the students are asking very few questions, then the teacher could provide those triggers, those that little nudge, which leads them to a question or ask the question herself, and then help them reflect over it instead of just answering the question straight away.
Yeah.
So if they learn to reflect while they are being taught, and then of course any 3-hour exam, no matter how well designed, will have its limitations. So that is why we also have internal assessment.
I think in subjects like psychology, especially like how I deal with the subjective domain of integral and all of those things, it's much easier to create an internal assessment environment to set the base so that the moment they are ready for external examination. So it also kinds of helps in that bridging.
Thank you, Aditi. I think we have discussed quite a bit about a few important things in education, and I would like to get more questions from you, and we'll continue this process. Thank you.
Thank you.